So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming along this afternoon, and very, very good to be here in Blackpool and the Fylde College. After 70 years of an astonishing reign, I think there are many reasons why Queen Elizabeth will be remembered as one of our very greatest monarchs. But there's one particular criterion that's applied to all reigns throughout history. What happened to the people? What the condition of the people? And in the last 70 years, the British people have begun to live lives that were unimaginable even to our grandparents, perhaps even our parents. To travel the world, to communicate, to express ourselves artistically, politically, culturally, as never before. We are at the forefront of multiple waves of scientific and technical advance. We live longer, healthier, and more prosperous lives than any previous generation. As we look back at that enormous span of history, our monarch's lifetime, we see that this progress was sometimes uneven and sometimes achieved against serious headwinds. An existential war when the very independence of our country was threatened, the Suez Crisis, industrial disputes that tore communities apart, riots, stagflation, the persistent scourge of high unemployment. Today, we're living in the aftermath of the worst pandemic for a century, and once again, we are steering into the wind. We face global pressures on prices caused by the lingering effects of COVID and the shock of Putin's aggression in Ukraine. We'll get through it. We'll get through it. Just as we got through the far greater challenge of COVID and the colossal fall in output that entailed. Our position is far better than during past economic difficulties. People don't face the misery of the 1980s or 1990s of being told in their millions that they were surplus to requirements, there was no job that they could do. We now have unemployment at its lowest level since 1974 and youth unemployment at or near a record low. It's an amazing fact that we now have more job vacancies than there are unemployed workers to fill them. And that in itself is feeding inflationary pressures. I want to talk frankly about what we need to do together so that we come through this period together as fast and as strongly as possible. And the first step is to understand the scale and the causes of the problem. Everyone can see and feel the impact on household budgets, the increases in the cost of food, the spooling digits on the petrol pumps, energy bills growing seemingly ever larger. Much of this has been driven by problems in global supply chains that followed the pandemic, the sudden surge in demand for gas from China, the world shortage of container ships. 6 months ago, there were good reasons to hope that the laws of supply and demand would start to operate and these problems would begin to abate. And the world responded, for instance, to the shortage of lorry drivers by hiring more, paying them better, and giving them better conditions. That progress was brutally interrupted on the 24th of February when Putin decided on his disastrous and unprovoked war in Ukraine. World markets have responded with a significant spike in prices, partly driven by sanctions, partly by the elevated risk premium, the inevitable increase in what businesses have to charge to compensate for raised global levels of uncertainty. The price of oil and gas looks likely to remain high for a while to come, and the same goes for grain and feed and fertilizer. And I know there are some who may argue, not in this country perhaps, but elsewhere, that the price of supporting the Ukrainians is now too high and they should be encouraged to accept whatever terms Putin may ask. I don't believe that option is really open to us. Never mind that abandoning the Ukrainians would be morally repugnant, since they are the victims and they have an absolute right to defend a free and independent country. We are simply not in a position to tell them what to do. They have shown by their heroism that they will fight to defend their homeland, and they have shown that they will win. Putin has made a colossal strategic error. He's fundamentally misunderstood the psychology of his opponents and what Ukraine really is. He will never succeed in subduing Ukraine, and the sooner he comes to that understanding, the better. But nor should he be allowed the partial success of swallowing some of the country, as he has done before, and declaring a ceasefire. He would be able to continue to twist the knife in the wound. The crocodile would simply come back for more, and he would be able to claim that his aggression and his violence had paid off. That would be a disaster. For Ukraine and all the other parts of the former Soviet Union that he might attack, and perhaps even for countries, one thinks of Poland, beyond former Soviet boundaries, disaster for them. To encourage a bad peace in Ukraine is to encourage Putin and to encourage all those around the world who believe that aggression pays. And that would be a mistake that would open the door to further conflict, further instability, further global uncertainty, and therefore further economic misery. I say this because I do not believe there is a quick fix in Ukraine, and because we must continue to support the Ukrainians as we have from the beginning for as long as it takes. But over time, I believe the economic consequences of the war in Ukraine will abate. The Europeans and others who depend on Russian hydrocarbons, and we, by the way, we still get 15% of our diesel from Russia, but we'll find, it was 30%, it's now 50%. We'll find other sources. The whole tragic experience will greatly accelerate the rush to clean, low-carbon energy of all kinds, and over time, the inflationary effects will start to diminish. We're dealing with labour market shortages, not just by reaching for the old lever of uncontrolled mass immigration, but with a points-based system that gives us the workforce we need. We're solving it by getting people, by the way, off welfare into work. 380,000 now have gone off welfare into work under the Way to Work scheme. Above all, by skilling up British people with the lifetime skills guarantee and all the investments that this government is proud to make into fantastic colleges such as the one I'm proud to be standing in today. We're trying to fix the labour market in addition to everything else. But we must deal with the here and now as it affects families in our country. We've got to recognise the pressures on household budgets that for some will be simply unaffordable, especially as the energy price cap goes up in the autumn. So this government is on the side of the British public in coping with those pressures. As the Chancellor has announced, we are directly helping the most vulnerable 8 million households with cash payments worth £1,200. Every household in the country will get £400 towards their energy costs. Most will get a £150 council tax rebate. Pensioners in receipt of winter fuel payments will get another £300, and the disabled will get another £150. Taken together with the funds already committed, that is £37 billion to help with the cost of living. We have the fiscal firepower to help, and we will. We will back Britain, and we will back the British people for as long as it takes. But of course, there's only one reason why we can currently afford to make these enormous commitments, and that is because we responded to the pandemic with a series of difficult but ultimately responsible decisions. First, we protected families and businesses with a package of support worth about £400 billion that was among the most generous in the world. Then, having rolled out vaccines faster than any other European country, we were able to open up our economy faster. And that's why we've had such a rapid rebound in employment, and last year we're the fastest growing G7 economy. And it's that fundamental strength, that the tax base of a high-wage, high-skill, low unemployment economy, that enables us to look after the British people. That's how we can afford to cover the costs. And we will continue to do what we can for as long as it takes. That was the pledge that I made to you, to the British public, during COVID. We delivered, and we will deliver again. At the same time, we must face some realities. The first is that no government in the world can afford to use taxpayers' money to shield everyone completely from the increased costs caused by powerful global forces. When we protected the population during COVID, the package of help was massively progressive in the sense that it went overwhelmingly to the most vulnerable households. And we'll do the same in the aftershocks of COVID. We'll get the right balance between spending what we can afford now and making sure there is a healthy economy to look forward to when the pressures abate. And while some support is of course going to be universal, the bulk of it will be targeted at those who need it most. And I think that approach is right and supported by the vast majority of people in this country. The second reality is that when you face inflationary pressure, you can't just spend your way out of it. On the contrary, you have to be careful not to add to inflationary pressure. We are constrained in what we can do, not just by the fiscal position, the risk of borrowing too much, but by the risk that we will fan the flames of further price increases. Which brings us to the third reality, that we can't fix the increase in the cost of living just by increasing wages to match the surge in prices. I think it's naturally a good thing for wages to go up as skills and productivity increase. That's what we want to see. And so we've been increasing wages with a record increase in the living wage, changes to universal credit. But when a country faces an inflationary problem, you can't just pay more and spend more. You have to find ways of tackling the underlying causes of inflation. If wages continually chase the increase in prices, then we risk a wage price spiral, such as this country experienced in the 1970s. You're far too young to remember the 1970s. I do. Stagflation, and that is inflation combined with stagnant economic growth. When a wage price spiral begins, there is only one cure, and that is to slam the brakes on rising prices with higher interest rates. And that has an immediate impact on mortgages, on rents. It puts up the cost of borrowing for business. It's bad for investment and growth. It's bad for jobs. It's bad for everyone. And of course, the increase in interest rates considerably increases the cost of borrowing for government. We're already spending £83 billion this year alone in servicing our debts. And every extra percentage point in interest payments is another £21 billion that has to go on paying lenders for our borrowing. And that's money that will have to be paid back by our children and grandchildren. It's money that could go on schools and hospitals. So we have the tools we need to get on top of rising prices. The global headwinds are strong, but our engines, the great supercharged ultra-green marine propulsion units of the UK economy, are stronger. We will get through it. And while it's not going to be quick or easy, you can be confident that things will get better and that we will emerge from this economy, from this with a strong country, with a strong and healthy economy. That won't happen if we continue to apply the same mindset that we had during COVID. And that is the answer to every problem is more state spending. We're already engaged in the biggest package of infrastructure investment for more than a century. We're transforming our railways, our roads. We're investing massively in skills, in research. We're making our communities safer. 13,576 police already out on the streets of the 20,000 that we promised, helping to bring neighbourhood crime down already by 31%. We're tackling the COVID backlogs, hiring thousands more doctors and nurses to speed up treatments. We're opening community diagnostic hubs across this country so that you can get the test or the scan that you need, but faster. We're fixing social care so that we can end delayed discharges. Far too many hospital beds are occupied by patients who could be better cared for elsewhere. We're investing in education, huge sums in defence, in the whole agenda that this government was elected to deliver, to unite and level up across our country. And we're keeping the promises. We're keeping the promises that will make a difference to millions of lives over the next decade and long, long into the future. It costs money, prodigious sums. And the result is that the overall burden of taxation is now very high. And sooner or later, and I would much rather it was sooner than later, that burden must come down. It's an aberration, the burden of tax, caused in no small part by the fiscal meteorite of COVID, and it must come down because the answer to the current economic predicament is not more tax and more spending. The answer is economic growth. And you can't spend your way out of inflation, and you can't tax your way into growth. So that's why the time has come for this government to do what it's been straining at the leash to do for 2 years, but which has been difficult during the COVID crisis, and that is to enact the supply-side reforms that will cut the costs of government, cut costs for business, and cut costs for people across the country. Let me take them in that order. It cannot be right that the size of central government has increased by 23% since 2015. There are 91,000 more officials than there were. I believe we have the best civil service in the world, but in view of the pressure now on families, we've got to find efficiencies, prune back Whitehall to the size it was only 5 or 6 years ago. I think that's something we can achieve without harming the public services they deliver. And in expanding and encouraging the private sector, it's time for the government to stop spending and to start cutting taxes and cutting regulation. This has been an era of phenomenal corporate welfare. From PPE contracts that were driven by the desperation of the pandemic to billions of pounds invested, driven by the same desperation in vaccines and antivirals, to the whole array of businesses that were quite rightly supported by the furlough, bounce-back loans, C-bills, all those other programs. Of course, this government is going to continue to invest in the bedrock of the economy on which businesses build their foundations, infrastructure, skills, technology. But sometimes the best way the government can help is simply to get out of the way, to do less or to do it better or simply not at all. If governments have billions, the markets have trillions, and we need to see more of that investment by businesses here in the UK. That's why we're now taking advantage of Brexit freedoms, accelerating reform of Solvency II, a one-size-fits-all EU diktat which has been unnecessarily preventing insurance and pension funds and others from making giant investments in UK firms and in infrastructure. We've put a super deduction of 130% on capital investment, giving UK firms an unparalleled opportunity to invest. We're opening free ports around the country with low tax arrangements and special planning regimes to enable growth and investment. We can turbocharge the city by rewriting and improving EU regulations such as MiFID II. Now we need to go further, and we will, identifying all the ways in which government rules and regulations are pushing up costs for business and increasing prices for everyone in this country. Over the next few weeks, this government will be setting out reforms to help people cut costs in every area of household expenditure, from food to energy to childcare to transport and housing. And we will do this despite any complaints that there may be from those with vested interest, because this government is firmly on your side in cutting those costs. We're on the side, for instance, of British farmers. We need to grow more and eat more of our own food in this country. And I think it's sensible to protect British agriculture from cut price or substandard food from overseas. But we're also on the side of British consumers. We do not grow many olives in this country that I'm aware of. Why do we have a tariff of 93p per kilo on Turkish olives, Turkish olive oil? Why do we have a tariff on bananas? This is a truly amazing and versatile country. But as far as I know, we do not grow many bananas, but not even in Blackpool. We are on your side. We are on your side in tackling fuel bills, and not just with the cash help that I've set out just now. We have cut fuel duty already, cut fuel duty by record amount. And what we want to see is those businesses passing on those savings to consumers, whether it's at the pumps or supermarkets or anywhere else. And I know many businesses, some are taking price, but I know many businesses can see the wisdom of protecting their customers rather than simply taking profits now. One of the ways, of course, to reduce energy costs is to increase energy supply. And that's why the British energy security strategy is going for a step change in the quantity of wind power. We generate 50 gigawatts by 2030, returning the UK to the status of the #1 wind power producer offshore wind power producer in the world. We are undoing the mistakes of many previous governments and building a new nuclear reactor every year rather than one every 10 years, along with many other reforms. And over the next few years, this will have a dramatic effect on the UK's power output, one that will be immensely beneficial for consumers and businesses alike. We are on your side in cutting the costs of transport, not just with the fantastic investments that we're making. It's time for us to grasp the nettle of reform and move sensibly and responsibly to the end of some outdated working practices. There are fully manned ticket offices in this country that barely sell a ticket a week. And now, 10 years ago, as chairman of Transport for London, I moved to take advantage of new ticket offices by closing ticket offices on the underground. It was initially painful, and the union chiefs predicted catastrophe, but we successfully made the argument that staff were better and more productively deployed on the platforms interacting with the public. And the time has come to do the same thing across the transport network. The union barons will protest, but the winners will be railway staff, whose industry will be placed on a much sounder long-term footing, and the fare-paying public. And we're on your side, by the way, in cutting the costs of childcare, about which I speak feelingly. We're making it easier to be a childminder and making sure parents make the most of their tax-free childcare allowances that already exist but aren't taken up. All these costs and more we will address in the coming weeks. But today, I want to talk about the single biggest chunk of household expenditure, and that is the cost of housing itself. Just this year alone, the price of a home in the UK has soared by an average of 9.8% to £278,000, which is £24,000 higher than this time last year. And in 2021, prices rose faster than wages. So that if you're one of the millions and millions of people outside the housing market and you're looking in, for every week and month that goes by, the dream of home ownership recedes further into the distance. And the average age of first-time buyers has been rising continuously. The proportion of young people who can afford to buy their own home has been falling. Between 2005 and 2016, the proportion of 25 to 34-year-olds who owned their own home fell by 20%, whereas in almost every other European country, that proportion has actually been rising. It's true that we still have higher rates of overall home ownership just ahead of France and just ahead of Germany, ahead of those two companies. And it's true that we're building more as fast as we can. After a sustained decline in home ownership rates under the Labour government, that rate is now starting to go back up, thanks to our support for first-time buyers, and also because we're building more homes. Last year, there were 400,000 first-time buyers of property, which was a 20-year high. But those raw numbers disguise the fact that home ownership is overwhelmingly concentrated amongst the over 65s, those who are able to buy in an era when housing was much cheaper. If you look at the millennial generation, I can see some millennials here, just 31% can own their own homes in the UK. In France, that figure is 41%. Now, partly this is a function of supply. When Labour left office, of course, they famously remarked that there was no money left. They'd also totally failed to build new homes at the rate that was necessary. And we've been sorting that out ever since. Thanks to the planning reforms that we've been putting in over the last decade, house building rates, as I say, reached a 20-year high. But everywhere else, though, outside London, I should clarify this, outside London, where the present mayor is not showing quite the speed and scale achieved by his immediate predecessor. But despite the progress everywhere outside London, we will remain one of the slowest, least prolific home building countries amongst the 28 members of the OECD. Since 1970, France has built 16.7 million homes, whereas we have built just 8.9 million. And in that period, our population has grown by more than 12 million people. And it's not true that there isn't the space to, there aren't sites where we can build these homes. There are fantastic brownfield sites up and down this country. There are places where we can build. So that's why Michael Gove has been developing plans to work hand in hand with local communities across England to build more of the right homes in the right places. We're going to put more publicly owned brownfield land to use and seek to unlock the small sites that are ideal for the kind of unobtrusive development that communities welcome, with a priority for first-time buyers and key workers. We're supporting self-build and custom-build homes, as has long been proposed by my colleague Richard Bacon, and we will sensitively make use of existing planning rights, for example, by making it easier to turn disused agricultural buildings into homes for local first-time buyers, and to support farmers in growing and diversifying their businesses. But it's not enough just to build more homes. We also need to recognise that while the overwhelming majority of people want the chance to buy their own home, for far too many, the finance required simply isn't available. The challenge facing first-time buyers today is bigger than anything we've seen before. In 20 years ago, in 2002, a home, on average, cost 4.5 times your income. Today, that multiple has risen to 9 times your income. We have a ludicrous situation where plenty of younger people could afford to make monthly payments that are early enough to cover astronomical rent bills, but the ever-spiralling price of a house or a flat has so inflated deposit requirements that saving even just 10% is a wholly unrealistic proposition for them. First-time buyers are trying to hit a continually moving target. And, of course, the global rise in the cost of living is only making life harder for those savers. So, we want to make it easier to get a mortgage, working with lenders so that they recognise the creditworthiness of tenants with a track record of paying their rents on time, making sure that the self-employed also get the mortgages they need. This government has made sure that there is a healthy supply of 95% mortgages. Tens of thousands of first-time buyers have since bought their home thanks to our mortgage guarantee scheme. We'd like to go further, so today I can announce a comprehensive review of the mortgage market. Reporting back this autumn, it will look at how we can give our nation of aspiring homeowners better access to low deposit mortgages, and what our own mortgage industry can learn from counterparts around the world who have alternative ways of offering finance, managing risk, and unbolting the door to ownership. And just as no generation should be locked out of home ownership because of where they were born, so nobody should be barred from that same dream simply because of where they live now. For 4 decades, it has been possible for council home tenants to use a discount to buy the property they live in. Over that time, almost 2 million people have been helped into home ownership. They've switched identities and psychology from being dependent on the state for every repair, from damp-proofing to a new front door, to being in charge of their own family home, able to make improvements and add value as they please. For various reasons, the number of tenants who actually use this freedom has been steadily diminishing. So now is the moment to widen the possibilities and to give greater freedoms to those who yearn to buy. I want us to deliver on the long-standing commitment made by several governments to extend the right to buy to housing associations. There are still 1.6 million people, 1.6 million households living in council homes, but there are now 2.5 million households whose homes belong to housing associations, and they're trapped. They can't buy, they don't have the security of ownership, they can't treat their home as their own or make the improvements that they want, and while some housing associations are excellent, others have been known to treat their tenants with scandalous indifference. So it's time for change. Over the coming months, we will work with the sector to bring forward a new right to buy scheme. It will work for tenants, giving millions more the chance to own their own home. It will work for taxpayers, responsibly capped at a level that is fully paid for, affordable within our existing spending plans, and with one-for-one replacement of each social housing property sold. And even as we deliver this home ownership revolution, we will continue with the revolution in renters' rights. As the 5th anniversary of the Grenfell tragedy approaches, we need no reminders of the importance of landlords listening to and working with their tenants, which is why we're giving tenants across the social and private sector better homes, greater security, and access to the kind of justice which we all deserve, but which many are currently denied. We're also dealing with the scourge of unfair leasehold terms, often every bit as onerous as the conditions imposed upon tenants by landlords, but applied to those who, as homeowners, should have far greater control over their homes and their lives. In this Parliament, we will supercharge leaseholders' ability to buy their own freehold, helping 4.6 million households genuinely to own their own home, with discounts of up to 90% for those trapped with egregious escalating ground rents. We will finish the right to own reforms Margaret Thatcher began in the 1980s, ending the absurd position where first-time buyers spend their life savings on flats only to find themselves being charged hundreds of pounds for painting their own doors or even unable to own a dog. That's what being on your side is all about. When ownership remains beyond the reach of a great many hard-working people, it's neither right nor fair to put ever vaster sums of taxpayers' money straight into the pocket of landlords. The total bill for housing support stands at about £30 billion a year, and the Office for Budget Responsibility has warned that if we don't take action, it could reach £50 billion by 2050. That is cash, taxpayers' cash, that is being simply swallowed to pay the mortgages of private sector landlords or being swallowed by housing associations. It's time to put this huge wall of money, taxpayers' money, to better use. It's time to turn benefits to bricks. So we're going to look to change the rules on welfare so that the 1.5 million working people who are in receipt of housing benefits and want, I stress working people, and who want to buy their first home will be given a new choice to spend their benefit on rent as now or put it towards a first ever mortgage. Doing so removes a significant barrier that currently prevents hundreds of thousands of families from buying their own home. And to remove another, we're going to explore discounting lifetime and Help to Buy ISA savings from universal credit eligibility rules. That doesn't mean letting anyone who claims benefits while sitting on a vast pension pot that they could be drawing on. That's not the people we're targeting, but making it easier for hard-working people to put away a little every month until they have enough for a deposit on their first home. To help keep people in a home, if they're unfortunate enough to become unemployed, we're going to let people access support for paying their mortgage that much earlier than is presently the case. And last of all, we're going to look at how we can securitize some of that colossal £30 billion housing benefits bill so that we can build more social homes with the potential of a right to buy. You add all those up, all those measures together, I think it will not only help us to build many more homes in the right place, but it will help millions of people realize what is currently an unattainable dream of home ownership. And that will be of massive benefit, massive benefit to them, massive social benefit to this country, and of course massive economic benefit to this country, not just in the way that it drives jobs and growth in the housing market, of course, in the construction industry, but also in the way that it helps to address the productivity problems that have beset the UK for so long. We are on your side in cutting the costs of childcare. We're on your side in cutting the costs of fuel. We're on your side in cutting transport costs. We're on your side in cutting the costs of home ownership. And of course, we are on your side in cutting the tax bill as fast as you responsibly can. And that in itself is an immense driver of productivity and growth. And in spite of all the pressures that this economy currently faces. We know that we will get through them as we've got through previous pressures and emerge stronger the other side. Because that is our plan for a stronger economy. By tackling the costs of living in all the ways that I have set out and more, by keeping energy, housing, transport, tackle those costs with supply-side reforms in all the ways I've set out, keeping our borrowing and debt under control, giving us the scope both to cut taxes on people, on families, and of course on business, and then backing business to grow and invest in this country in the way that they are. Colossal sums coming into the UK right now, as everybody knows. We are easily the biggest destination for tech investment anywhere in Europe, I think as much as Germany, France and Israel combined. And by continuing to secure and drive the benefits of Brexit, our new freedoms across the whole of the UK, everything from free ports to financial services, we will continue to make sure the people of this country achieve and continue to achieve the happiness and security that comes from having a high-wage, high-skilled job in ever greater numbers. That's what we're achieving right now, and that's what we're going to continue to achieve. And that is how it's that plan for a stronger economy that will mean that we will be able to get on with the mission on which this government was elected, to unite and level up across our country. So that no matter where you are born or what's your background, we will give you the chance to fulfill your potential. With a plan, I think, for a stronger economy that has all the makings to be the strongest and most prosperous in Europe. Thank you all very much for listening, and thank you, Blackpool and the Fylde College, for your warm welcome this morning. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Right, now we're going to go straight away. We've got 6 questions from the media, and I'm going to go straight away to the BBC, Chris Mason.
Thank you. Chris Mason from BBC News. Many people, Prime Minister, are desperately worried about the cost of living, and yet they see in you a Prime Minister described by a former Conservative leader, no less, as someone driving down the motorway with 2 flat tyres. Why should people believe you when you say you can deliver, when 40% of your MPs don't think you can?
Right, Chris, I mean, there I was really hoping that you would talk about all the things that we're doing to take the country forward, but never mind. I venerate the organisation from which you come, and I think the answer is very simple. If you want a proof point of what we're going to deliver, look at what we've already delivered. Look at the way we got the country through the worst pandemic, I think, for 100 years. The speed and efficiency of the vaccine rollout, and look at the fact that we've emerged from it when people were saying that we would have unemployment in the region of 12 to 14%, with the lowest rate of unemployment since 1974. Youth unemployment at or near record lows. What I'm saying to you today, and I'm speaking very frankly to the country, is I believe we now have a problem that follows on directly from COVID. I think it's less severe than the challenge of that pandemic, but it's important to level with people about the price pressures that we face, and to explain what the government is doing. And I think that the measures that we're setting out in tackling the cost of living, not just by using taxpayers' money, but by reforming services, by reforming the way government operates, cutting costs of government, but also making sure that we change everything from our energy markets to our mass transportation systems, and as I said at quite some length just now, an opportunity to help people with their single biggest cost, which is housing. And that is, if you look at family budgets, that's where the money goes, and people find ownership something really, really very difficult to attain. And that's the And I think that's wrong. I think that what you have in this package today is some very creative ideas, not just to build more homes in the right places, and that's crucial. You've got to build more. You've got to build more. But you've also got to give people the chance to live in them, to own them, whatever tenure. And by the way, you ask about delivery. Never forget, and if anybody asks about social housing, I built more social housing than the Labour mayor, past the previous one and the current one. So we get on and build, but what we want to do is give people the chance of ownership. And I think it's a massive, massive thing to do. It's a massive, massive thing to do, and it's right for people, and it's right for families, and I think it's right for the economy as well. Dan Hewitt of ITV.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. Dan Hewitt, ITV News. On housing, isn't the really big problem here in this country is that we simply don't have enough affordable homes? You made no mention in your speech of the 121,000 children currently living in temporary accommodation, or the 1 million plus families on social housing waiting lists. Far from building more homes for them, doesn't this policy of right to buy seriously risk selling off what few affordable homes we have left in this country? And you said you want to build more social homes. Will you commit to providing a number of social homes you want to see built year on year?
Yeah. So, Dan, I'm going to totally reject your... we build huge numbers of affordable homes right now. And we can be very proud of. When I was, as I said just now to Chris, when I was, I built more than 100,000 affordable homes in London in my time as mayor. Far more, I think, from memory than Ken Livingstone did, and certainly I built them at a far greater rate than the current mayor did. We build affordable homes. As far as I can remember, we built more affordable homes in 1 year of the incoming Conservative government after 2010 than, or coalition government, than the Labour Party did in 13 years in office. So we understand the vital importance of council homes and affordable homes. Actually, the interesting thing about this country is that we do have, by comparison with many other European countries, a lot of social housing. 1 in 5 homes in this country is social housing, and that's far more than France, Germany, or most other countries. And what we want to do is make sure that we give people the chance not just to live in an affordable home, but eventually, when they want to, when they feel that their situation enables them to buy it. And that's a fantastic, mobilizing, motivating thing that drives people's thoughts and passions and engages them deeply. And it's a very, very important change to make if you can. But of course, we will continue to insist, as I said in the speech, that there's a one-to-one replacement, so that when the sales are made, that you use the receipts to build more. And of course, it costs less to build than to buy. And so that's the way we'll do it. Well, we want to see at least a replacement, and we want to build hundreds of thousands more homes every year. And I think I'm right in saying that in the year before COVID, the number of homes built in this country under this government was about 245,000. Which is almost a 30-year high. We are. You look as though you don't believe me. Well, as I said to you, we are building consistently more affordable homes than Labour ever did. And when you look at the council house numbers, we left them absolutely standing. Of course, we want more affordable homes, but the way to do that is to have more home building, full stop. And you won't get, and I know very well that you won't get, any development has got to have a mixture of market sale and affordable. And the problem that we've had is that successive Labour governments have imposed such ridiculous quotas on developments that nothing has gone ahead. And so you haven't actually seen development at all. You've seen no private sector building or affordable either. And what we want to do is get the market going in places where it works, on brownfield sites that are made viable by the infrastructure investments that we're were putting in that I barely began to describe. And that is the way. That's how we always outbuild the Labour Party when it comes to delivering social homes as well as private homes. And that is what we're going to continue to do. GB News, Darren McCaffrey.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Just on the supply of homes, you're right, I think it was about 245,000 in 2019, but you're committed to 300,000 homes by the middle of this decade. In fact, 300,000 is what experts says is standing still. No Conservative government has done it over the last 12 years. Can you give a cast-iron guarantee that by the middle of this decade, you would at least reach that manifesto commitment? And doesn't that frankly mean changing planning laws, dealing with NIMBYism? And just second of all...
With NIMBYism?
Yeah, indeed. And just second of all, on fuel, because today, I think a new record's been broken that it's going to cost the average family 100 quid to top up their cars. Now, you've cut taxes in this country, fuel duty, by 5p. I've done some research on the train on the way up here, Prime Minister. In Ireland, it's 17p. This is in recent months. Spain, 17p. France, 13 pence. The Netherlands, 14p cuts. Germany, 25 pence. I could go on. 5p isn't enough, is it, Prime Minister? We're the second highest fuel duty tax country in Europe. You're going to have to go further than 5 pence, aren't you?
So, Darren, first of all, on our ambition for home building, I think it was back in, you have to go right back to 1968 to find a time when we were building more than 400,000 homes a year in this country. So we've never built enough fast enough because of all the reasons that you rightly describe. But everybody understands that we are sensitive to development that isn't in the right place, and that's perfectly reasonable. We love our natural world. We want to make sure that you have development that is appropriate. But that's why I think the reforms that Michael Gove is putting through today, the second reading of the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, are right, and they will give local people much more control over where to site things, to allow appropriate developments to go ahead in places where they will be welcomed and where they will help young people growing up in those communities. And I think that is what people want around this country. I think it will allow development to go ahead in ways that we haven't seen before. I can't give you a cast iron guarantee that we're going to get to a number in a particular year, but what I can point you to is the record of delivery under Conservative governments and the way that we do it. And clearly, you've got to make sure that you're not building everywhere on precious greenbelt land, that you're taking care of the natural world. But you don't have to. The trick to pull off to build more homes is, as I was saying I think maybe it's to Chris, you've got to put in the infrastructure. You've got to make sure that not only the schools and hospitals, but the roads, the mass transit system, the transport systems, to enable those developments to be viable. The problem is, if you take a development like Barking Riverside, which I happen to know quite well, or all the stuff up in the Thames Gateway area. We're a long way out from Blackpool when we discuss this, but I remember these developments intimately because I tried to do. It's when you don't have the transport that they're not viable for the developers, and when they're not viable for the developers, you can't get the affordable either. But if you put in Crossrail, for instance, will enable us to do things that were simply not possible. And Crossrail will enable developments to go ahead in parts of our capital that were not economically viable. And that's one of the reasons. So you'll be able to give people access to the housing that they need. And that is what this government is doing. That's why we've got a huge programme of infrastructure, £650 billion worth of investment overall in infrastructure, skills and technology. Look at what we're doing. That is designed partly to enable the private sector to come in and build homes where people want them, where they won't be on the green belt, and where they can do the job for a generation to come. On fuel, I hear you. We made a cut already. What I want to see, the biggest cut ever in fuel duty. what I want to see is those cuts in taxation not just swallowed up in one gulp without touching the gullet of the fuel companies. I want to see those cuts having an impact on the pumps, and we are watching very closely to see what happens. As I said, I think many companies don't want to just take profit. They do have a sense of responsibility, but we need to see it. When it comes to fiscal measures, Darren, as you can readily imagine, this is the province of my right honourable friend, the Chancellor. I'm not going to anticipate what he may or may not do, but I can tell you that we are going to continue to do everything in our power to look after the British people throughout this pandemic and throughout the aftershocks of the pandemic, just as we did during COVID. And I've said that many times. I think people know that to be that to be right. Geraldine Scott of the Times.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You've spoken a lot today about low deposits, but arguably the more difficult factor for a lot of people that want to get on the ladder is that multiplier. You said yourself it's up to 9 times now. So what can you do to tackle that? Because even if you scrape the deposit together, that's a massive barrier. And are you looking at mortgage insurance like they have in Canada to secure those low deposits? And then just a second one on tax. You've got your big speech with the Chancellor coming up in the next couple of weeks. We understand at the Times you're looking to cut income tax to 2 pence in 2024 rather than 1.
2 pence?
By 2 pence.
You're driving a hard bargain on behalf of... I know Times read...
By 2 pence rather than 1 pence in 2024. Is that something you're looking at?
Okay, well, look, so Geraldine, first of all, thank you. On the mortgage market, what we want, yes, people should, we've got to help people to get deposits, but we also need to have mortgages that, we need to have many more 95% mortgages, so mortgages that cover 95% of costs of the property. It is punitively difficult for so many people now in this country. It doesn't need to be that way. That's one of the reasons we're reforming it. And there are products already there, but they sort of come and they go. We want to make sure there's a ready stream of such products for the people who need them, as well as all the other initiatives that I mentioned just now. On what Rishi and I are talking about on fiscal measures, I'm sorry to say that you are just going to have to contain your impatience there. I mean, I think reducing income tax to 2p is nobody, not even on the backbenches of the Tory party, nobody has yet proposed that to me. But I know, and I think everybody in this country knows, that because of COVID, we had a massive fiscal shock, and it was because of the strength of our economy that we were able to look after people, and we still are. We just want to make sure that as we come out of it, we keep things strong, take sensible steps, but of course, as I think I said at least a couple of times, we're strongly inclined to stimulate further growth, further productivity with tax cuts as and when they become sensible. Mason Boycott Owen of The Telegraph.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You say that you want to get the tax burden down for working people, and you say that you want to cut taxes when that's responsible. Is it not responsible now to do that, to help with cost of living and to help drive growth? Thanks.
Well, that's why we, for instance, are cutting taxes, cutting national insurance contributions already. 70% of the people who pay NICs are getting a tax cut next month worth an average of £330. As I said earlier on, we're cutting council tax for most people by £150. We cut fuel duty by the biggest amount ever. But yes, of course, we're going to continue to look at ways in which we can sensibly reduce the burden and help households in any way that we can. Cost of housing is a big chunk of expenditure. Transport's a big chunk. Childcare is a big chunk. Energy is an ever-growing chunk, but tax is the biggest of all. And we certainly aim to get that down. Jess Elgott of The Guardian.
Thank you, Prime Minister. 2 questions, if I may. The OECD predicts us having the lowest growth in the G20 apart from Russia. I think we can diagnose Russia's problem. But what you talked a lot in the beginning of your speech about the international issues that are causing slow economic growth. But why is it what is Britain particularly doing wrong to have the lowest, to have that such low growth? And a quick second one, if I may, just to follow up on the petrol question. You say that you're watching retailers very closely, and say, but what if they continue to not pass on the cuts? What will the government do?
Well, that's okay. So first of all, on the current trends in growth numbers, don't forget, because we came out first, because of the steps that we took, we're slightly out of sync with much of the rest of the OECD. We had a faster recovery because we had a fast vaccine rollout. We came out of it fast. We're particularly exposed now to energy price shock. That's because I'm afraid the UK is just not self-reliant enough. We made a big dash for gas, if you remember. The price of gas has gone up. We totally failed to invest in nuclear. That left us without the self-reliance that we need on energy prices. As I say, we're trying to. This government is now urgently trying to rectify that. We're stampeding towards more offshore wind, more nuclear. The trouble is that they will come on, offshore wind in particular can come on stream quickly, but it requires, it will take some time. But if you look at the nuclear, will certainly take some time. But I think that there will be an abatement, as I say, of those costs within the foreseeable future. You can see the prospect of inflation coming down again. And I just remind you that when you look at the IMF forecasts or other forecasts, they actually have the UK returning at or near the top of the G7 growth league, in the not too distant future. Yes, so be of good cheer about that. But the purpose of my speech today is just to say to everybody, look, yes, price pressures are going to make things tough for a while, but we will get through it. Here are the steps that we're taking to get through it. And at the other side, we will have a much stronger economy. And on your second question, which was, I think, about fuel prices. Watching the pumps. We are watching it. And of course, we hope that corporations will be responsible and will recognize that now is the time not just to take price, but to look after consumers. And that's in their long-term interests as well. And as I think I said to possibly Darren, I'm not going to anticipate what the fiscal decisions the Chancellor may take, but we will continue to look after people in any way that we can. Thank you all very much for your time this morning. I much appreciate it. This afternoon. Thank you.